Okay, welcome back to the channel. Something a little bit different on this video. I am making a epoxy countertop for someone. So I'm just going to go through kind of like the steps on this one. I'm currently doing the edges. So what I do is I'm kind of make like a rock faced edge, something that's kind of like rough looking to simulate just like a slab of rock. So what I started with is basically the top right here. There's two layers. You can see really right here is where the two boards meet. So 2 3/4 inch thick MDF boards. I did have to special order the top piece because it is 10 feet long. Standard is usually 8 feet long. The whole top is 2.5 by 10 feet. So what I did underneath, get a better view here. So I put another layer of the 3/4 inch MDF right here. It goes all the way around like a perimeter. And then also I did it in the middle to support it. So now it's kind of hard to tell because the 2x4s are underneath it, but I had to get these 2x4s and put them underneath the top because I have to work underneath this edge right here. I just can't let this top actually sit on my sawhorses. It needs to be up, and then whatever's holding it needs to be in because I need to work right here. So I'm currently, like I said, I'm currently doing these edges to make like a rock face edge. So what I initially do is I take an angle grinder with like just like a grinding disc, one of the thick stone disc, not like a flat disc or something like that, an actual thick grinding stone disc. And I just go around, and you don't have to make it perfect because a natural slab of stone is not perfect. So I just go around and kind of like chisel this out a little bit. And then I come back. Well, after that, I put it's an acrylic fortifier just on the edges here. And it'll help the Bondo bond a lot better to this edge of the MDF. So I just have just a little bit left. So I will show you how I do that and everything. Then once I get done with that, I will go around and I'll sand this down a little bit, because you can kind of see how it's all like got like the pointed drips and everything, like that right there. You don't want that. So you want to kind of like sand that down a little bit. So I'll put you on the tripod and let's mix up some Bondo. All right, so we have the Bondo here. Just gonna open this up. And this is just nothing special. You can buy this at Lowe's, Home Depot, or a lot of different hardware stores. Just basic all-purpose Bondo, nothing special. It is a 2-part, so here's your cream and hardener. The instruction says to make a 3-inch diameter of the Bondo, 1/2 inch thick, and then just a bead, a 3-inch bead of your hardener on top of it. So what I did is I found that, the inside of this is about 3 inches. The more you do this, so basically what I have here is just a piece of plywood, and I've got a really thick piece of plastic, because you want to do this on non-porous. So you don't want to do it on, you know, the piece of plywood. So this piece of plastic, it's non-porous, so it's perfect. You can mix it right here and everything. So what I did was I just traced this out. So I know I have a 3-inch diameter circle. I have to do that every probably 3-4 times, because then I lose my line. I can't see it. So, take some Bondo here. It is very, very stringy. Just put in this circle here. It takes some time to get how much you really need. I'm just trying not to make a mess here. And so since this is like a 2-part, you do have only so much time to mix this and work it, because when it really starts to harden up, that's pretty much about it. You won't be able to work with it. So we're getting pretty close now. Like I said, 3-inch diameter circle, 1/2 inch thick, with the 3-inch bead of the hardener. And it's best to mix this up in small amounts. Unless if you do something bigger than this, then you're going to have a bigger type of area to mix it. Because once I start mixing all this and everything and spreading it out really thin, I definitely use up this whole area. And you wanna, after you mix this, you wanna keep it thin, because if you keep it real thick, it starts to generate heat, and that's when it'll really start hardening up. So we're pretty close right there. And I think this stuff is really user friendly, because I know every single time I do this, I know I don't have the exact same amount, and it's curing just fine. So I don't think it really has to be perfect, but it probably should be pretty darn close. So something like that. So I've got some actual Bondo plastic hand spatulas here, and I've got this, but I'll show you what I use this for. So what I do is I go ahead and start working it on itself, you know, flipping upside down. And then I will start spreading it out really thin. And you can see the white is the cream hardener. So you definitely don't want to see this. You don't want to see the white stuff. So I just smear it out real thin. And there is a learning curve for sure. You'll figure it out oh, I mixed it way too long and I didn't even have enough time to put it on the project or whatever. So you kind of just getting the rhythm of knowing how much you can really spend some time mixing this. what I do is try to set it here off to the side, because I know the stuff that's against the spatula, like up here towards the top, probably hasn't been mixed that well. So I like to try to make sure I get all of that off as best I can. We're just about done here. It's gonna start to set up really quick. All right, I'm gonna go over here and put this on the edge of the countertop. So what I like to do first is make sure I fill in all the grooves. Make sure you fill in all the grooves. Press it in there tight. Don't worry about making a mess. I'm gonna do some sanding. It's fine. Then once I know everything's kind of pressed in, usually just make sure I get this bottom edge and this top edge here. And like I said, this is the edge of a natural slab of rock is not perfect. So give it some character. Some parts can be kind of sticking out. Some parts can be kind of bent a little bit. Just kind of touch it a little bit like this. So about right here is where I'm going to start the next one. Hasn't really starting to set up a little bit. Still got a little bit of working time. All right, now it's starting to set up. Now it's starting to set up. All right, that's about it for that one. We'll mix up some more. Maybe one more batch. One more batch, and I think we're be about done here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just make it your own. Give it some character, but I'm going to do some sanding on it, so it's going to change a little bit. And it's starting to set up right now, I can tell. So you don't have a whole lot of time to work with it, but it's not too bad. All right, one more batch and I think we got it. Welcome back to the epoxy project. All right, so after I got all the Bondo on the edges and everything to make the rock face edges, I sanded everything down, kind of rounded everything off because the epoxy has to flow nice and over onto the edge. You want to get all the real sharp, pointy out. You don't want people walking around the edges and it snags on their clothes and stuff like that. Now when you do the epoxy, when it's on the edges, it will make it smoother. So, all right, so I got the top painted, 2 coats, as well as the bottom is 2 coats of paint. Before you put the epoxy down, make sure your top is clean, as well as you want to sand it down with 220 grit sandpaper. That gives the epoxy a mechanical bond, just makes it adhere better. So like I said, make sure everything is clean. Make sure you have everything ready to go. Your mixing bucket, your epoxy, your trowel, any type of color pigments or whatever you're putting the epoxy, chopping brush, I got that over there, and then some type of timer to mix your epoxy. So I go with Stone Coat Countertops epoxy. That's what I've used on my countertops, and I've had, when I did the countertops, I had no experience at all, none. And I did them first time, I had no problems with it. So it is a 1-to-1 ratio, and you kind of want to make sure the temperature of the room is kind of fairly warm. It's probably about 73, 74 in here. Makes the epoxy mix better, makes it flow better. And you want to get a graduated measuring bucket because it has to be to scale. Like I said, 1-to-1 ratio. And then 3 ounces of epoxy per square foot. So I've calculated what I need and everything. So I'm gonna go 48 ounces of B and 48 ounces of A. And you wanna mix you wanna start with B first and then go A into B because your resin is a lot thicker. So you wanna pour that in last. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and measure this up. So we'll start with B. So like I said, you gotta do 1-to-1. So I calculated a little over about 95 ounces, 96 ounces. So that'll work out perfect. 48 plus 48 is 96. So we're gonna go all the way to the 48 ounce mark. Make sure your bucket is clean inside. And when you get real close to it, just start slowing down. Kind of want to let it settle a little bit. Starting to get pretty close. I'm gonna slow down, and it's okay to let this sit like that. It's not gonna harden up or anything. So what I've been told is that this is one of the most important things right here. Is in order to get a good epoxy project is mixing it properly. So make sure you do it right. It's got to be 1-to-1. If not, then you might get some sticky spots. So we are pretty close. Just let it settle a little bit. And obviously make sure your top is level. 1 for when you pour the epoxy, and 2, wherever you set your bucket at and measure and make sure that's level. Here's the A. This stuff's gonna be a little bit thicker. Actually a lot thicker. We're going to take it all the way up to 96. I usually try to go ahead and kind of move it around so it's just not in the center. Just try not to get it on the sides of the bucket, the walls of the bucket. Because you don't know how much is really sticking to the side. Just let it sit for a little bit. Now it's not really going to cure or harden until you really start mixing it, so how it is right now is fine. I mean, you don't want to let it sit in there for a long time. Alright, so I got my mixing paddle. We're going to mix this for 2 minutes, and then we're going to add the additive in it. So we're going to start the stopwatch here for 2 minutes. And it's okay if it gets cloudy. It's going to do that. So this is one of the things you got to get right. Make sure you mix it really good for at least 2 minutes. I'll probably go more than that because I'm going to be putting the metallic pigment powder in it. When you bring the bit out like this, just make sure you're going slow, because if not, you'll be flinging epoxy everywhere. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pour the powder in there. So this is silver. This is from Stone Coat as well. I know I'm going to do at least 2 of these. Definitely don't want to like breathe this stuff or anything. I think I might go more. So now you kind of gotta, you don't want to be playing around. And then we're gonna go diamond dust. I think I'm only gonna do one of these though. Just one. This stuff right here is supposed to float almost to the top. Oh man, that stuff is light. It's floating around, you can tell. Man, oh man. Start in the center. You do not want to put around the edges. In the center. You want to make sure you have your wooden stir stick ready. because I'm going to get the residual that's out of the bucket. Have your trowel ready as well. So I think I'm going to do it probably the least amount of epoxy is probably, I'm going to do it right here. So, I'll take this in here, get the residual, scrape it out. Try not to let go to waste. Okay. Set this in here. Now, if you're unsure if that's not mixed, we can go ahead and just mix this. Nice and good. Like so. Should be good. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we're going to start trying to work it around. Not that hard. Just do not take it to all the way over the edges. Because once you start moving it over the edge, the epoxy is going to find its way and start flowing that way. Even though that your top is probably going to be pretty level, it's going to find its way out. Once it finds its way out, that's when you have to work on the edges. So we're just going to just gradually start working its way to the edges. Getting closer and closer. Now I do know that my top is slightly down on this side. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's slightly down on this side. So I kind of want to go on this side, on that side first. Because if I move it down and over here, it's really going to start flowing on this side. This stuff has a pretty good working time. So don't panic, but you got to keep moving. Yeah, you can start getting closer and closer. Oh, got a little bit on this side. It's going to start finding its way. I hear it dripping on that side. Don't step in your epoxy. I probably should have put more plastic down in cardboard, but let's see what happens. Getting close to the edges now. I'll show you what we'll do with this brush. It's gonna look pretty cool. Nothing too fancy on this one, pretty basic. All right, so I'm gonna hold this just for now because I still might need it. So take your brush. Now I pulled on these bristles. I pulled on these bristles so I wouldn't have any loose bristles. So I'm just gonna come in here where I think it's probably kind of high and start working these edges. This is when your hand's gonna start to hurt. Definitely work out your hand muscles. You have to do these edges multiple times. It's just how it is. If you want to make these edges a rock face edge. Gotta get on those little nooks and crannies. Almost there. So, I think I'm done with the trowel. So I'll show you what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna chop the whole top to get the trowel lines out. And that'll kind of help it start to move around a little bit. Alright, so I think I'm done with the trowel. I'm gonna set it down like this, actually like this, so the epoxy runs off of the notches and down. Set it up in here. Now, in no pattern, you don't want a pattern when you do this. This is called chopping it. That'll get the lines out from the trowel, and it'll actually bring up the pigment a little bit as well. Kind of get on these edges a little bit, but in no pattern whatsoever. No pattern. looks like you need a little bit bigger brush, but these are like just, I think like the Wooster Pros. I got them from Home Depot. They're angled shortcut ones. I made some Indiana tables a couple years ago and put like a crimson red metallic flake in it. And by the way, I'm not an Indiana fan, I'm a Kentucky fan, believe it or not, even though I live in Indiana. All the rest of my family is all big IU fans. But so I made them some Indiana tables for Christmas. And I kind of chopped it for a while, let it sit 10, 15 minutes and chopped it again because it brought the pigment back, because it brought the pigment up. I forgot how powdery this can be on your hands. Almost there. And then we'll go back and work the edges really good. Probably will chop it again, I think, after I work the edges. And then we will torch it, and torch it gets all the air bubbles out. That's pretty common as far as different other epoxy companies. Alright, we're going to work these edges really good. Get in there where you see like just the light gray paint. I'll probably chop it one more time and then do the edges, and then we'll torch it, and I think we'll be done. Now you will start to get drips underneath here, so it's best to just knock them off, smooth them out. You're not going to be able to get all of them because eventually you're just going to have to stop. Because it will start to thicken up. And that will be all you can really do. And if you see how I got this countertop, I got it raised off the sawhorses because you got to get underneath, and then it's sitting on 2x4s. Well, the 2x4s are in a little bit, so you can get under here and get your drips and stuff. gonna chop it one more time. No pattern. Stuff is kind of nerve-wracking to work with just because you only get one shot. Because if it doesn't turn out right, doesn't cure right, man, it's just a big mess and it's almost a throwaway. So I would say probably the number one thing that you gotta get right is the mixing. All right, I'm gonna do the edges one more time. Just the actual edges. Now I will have to come back and smooth the drips. So we're just gonna do the edges, get in there, all those little really tight nooks and crannies. Fill them in with some color. No pattern. Once we get all air bubbles out. This will really smooth it out. Don't want to get too close. You don't want to burn the epoxy. Does kind of take a while. Good morning, everyone. Different day here. I apologize. My phone died, so I wasn't able to record the whole process. So after I torched it and everything, got all the bubbles out, the only thing that you really have to do is come back with that same brush that you're doing the edges with and smooth out these drips on the very bottom. If you don't, they'll get really big and they'll get hard, and then you'll have to flip the top and then you'll have to sand it before you do the clear coat. Now I do have drips, but they're very, 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 very little, and you can't really tell a big difference between because of the edge is kind of rough, anyways. So what you got to do now is that I'm going to lightly sand the top. It's going to scratch it. Trust me, you're not going to see those scratches. Okay, you have to do this because you have to have the clear coat have a mechanical bond, okay? So I'm gonna sand it with my orbital sander with 220 grit sandpaper. After that, you wanna make sure your top is clean, okay? And then we'll be ready for clear coat. All right, let's get started. So, like I said, you don't want to do a whole lot. You're just kind of just giving it just a little bit of a tooth to hold on to. Now with that orbital sander, what I've noticed in the past, especially when I did my tops, you gotta be very, very careful on these edges. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time, because what will happen is that you'll start to take the color off. Now I don't know how that is. Maybe that's because that's how the epoxy lays and it's real thin right around here. But you can tell just a little bit it was starting to take some of the color off. Now that's why you paint it. That's why you paint your top kind of like a base color. So therefore, when if you do get all the way through the color coat, it's not as noticeable. Because if you don't paint it, then it's just you're gonna have like a wood spot. Because like I said, this is MDF, medium density fiberboard. So just right here where I kind of got pretty kind of heavy with the sander, it's fine though. It'll be completely shiny. It just might not have as much, glitter or sparkly in that area, but it'll be fine. So that's pretty much about all you gotta do. Now I could come back in here a little bit and sand a little bit more, but I'm afraid that I'll get into it too much. So I think this is probably pretty good. So you want to try to clean it because you'll get all this the fine dust. So that's what we're going to do next. Is go ahead and clean everything real good. So what I like to do is just get a damp rag first. That'll get most of the dust off, and then I'll wipe it down with at least another dry one. Maybe another damp one, we'll see. I got another damp towel, just to make sure. Alright, I like doing this trick right here, just taking your whole roll of paper towels. This way you can actually look at it and see if you're getting any dust. Very, very little. Alright, that's about all I gotta do there. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up the epoxy. It's the same stuff, 1-to-1 ratio. Just make sure you mix it right. Mix it with your paddle wheel on your drill and everything for at least 2 minutes. 3, 4, or 5 minutes, it's not gonna hurt to mix it that longer. But we're going to skip right to it. I'm not going to show you how I'm going to pour it into the graduated cylinder since I already showed you that.